On this episode of AV Week, AVI-SPL buys SKC, looking at digital signage upgrades in the AV industry and resigning in AV. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 538, recorded Friday, December 10th, 2021. Flyover country.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Extron and by
Sure, sound extraordinary.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am the host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week. First and foremost, God lover Charmaine Torella from Varex, joining us from the highly coveted Varex holiday party. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Very good. Awesome. Also with us, I'll go by order of people I've met in person, I guess. We'll work it that way. First and foremost, Mr. Paul Dexter. Paul is from JetBuilt. I met him in Orlando first and foremost at InfoComm this year, but then we got to hang out in London for the AV Awards this year as well. So welcome, sir.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and it was fantastic to meet you and spend that time in London. And Merry Christmas as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Max Johnson comes to us from our buddies over NSCA. I'm trusting my good friend Tom LeBlanc, who said, "Yeah, I gotta have Max on." So if Max is horrible, send the emails to Tom LeBlanc at NSCA. So welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Tim, and hopefully we can change not meeting in person, or maybe we can meet in person in February.
Dude, you're in Cedar Rapids, you know. Like, for those of you outside of the country, outside of the U.S., that's a bit like going to left of Siberia, right?
Yeah. If you've seen the movie Cedar Rapids, it's very similar to that. So
yeah. Well, if you've seen Field of Dreams, you've seen Cedar Rapids, right? There you go. That actually is better. I'm
it's
joking.
Not all that bad in my opinion. I've driven through there a number of times, and it's a fantastic place. Salt of the earth.
Well, thanks,
There we
Paul.
go.
That's very nice. Iowa nice.
Well, coming to you from Newport Beach, of course, where it's not salt of the earth, but it's fantastic, of course. So we've all got the things we've all got some advantages and disadvantages.
We do, and Max and I are both in what the rest of the country would call flyover country, right? So Charmaine would go over Max and me to go see Paul, basically, is what we're doing there. All right, enough of geography and U.S. whatever. First story comes to us actually from our website. AVI-SPL announces agreement to acquire SKC Communications. Now, pause for 1 minute. This comes 1 week after we just talked about the SEN Top 50, which, no surprise, SPL was on the top of that list. Also, sidebar and 100% statement here, AVNation and I work for Conference Technologies CTI integrator out of St. Louis. So understand that as I go into this. But AVI-SPL CEO says, quote unquote, SKC has built deep relationships across its loyal customer base, offering best of breed UCC enterprise enablement. We're thrilled to partner with such an incredibly talented team and welcome them to AVI-SPL. Charmaine, I'm going to start with you on this. Not that SPL didn't have a presence in Kansas City, right? So that was the first interesting part. You look at them at an acquisition like this, typically, especially the size of SPL, you go, okay, what were they missing, right? What didn't they have that, an acquisition like this adds to their portfolio? So I'll ask you, what didn't they have that this makes sense?
What they did have is a deeper penetration in what you call flyover country, right? So they had a presence in the Midwest, absolutely. But SKC Communications has a deep presence within the Midwest, not to mention their processes for project delivery is just really strong. They have a lot of great field engineers and techs, and they have a good process. So with that said, it was an amazing acquisition, one that took me by surprise, by the way. I was like, what? Wait a minute. Wow. Okay. This is great. Now they're going to have that deeper presence in the Midwest where there's a lot of new AV projects in different markets and new markets developing in the Midwest. I went to Total Tech Summit that was sponsored by Commercial Integrator a few weeks ago. And one thing that I came out of that summit with is there's a lot of cannabis businesses that are doing AV like no tomorrow. So that's definitely in flyover country, in SKC territory. They are a part of that. AVI-SPL, that's a good capture. They can now really get into that. And they're going to deepen their customer base and their reach within the Midwest.
All right, Paul, same kind of question here. Paul has an interesting career in general and a trajectory to where he's at now in a software. In a previous life before the software, he also used to be an integrator. So take it either from your manufacturer software side or your days as an integrator. What do mergers or acquisitions rather like this mean to you where you sit?
Yeah, it's funny. Well, frankly, it's funny because we've been talking to SKC for the last 6 months really strong. Well, no, for the last year really strong, and then about 4 months ago they suddenly got very, very quiet, and now we know why, of course. So there's a little bit of sadness on our side because we're very we love that relationship that was blossoming. But it's funny, the question you asked Charmaine earlier was what did they have that they didn't, what did they have that they can get through this acquisition? The cynical guy in me says, well, what they didn't have was more separation between number 2 and 3 and so on SCN Top 50, and because this has been a crazy, crazy year, and, I work with a lot of the top 50 and so many of them, as always have, continue to get gobbled up, and continue to, that leading pack continues to feel like they need to acquire to keep that hold, and that's completely valid. Nothing wrong with that, But you're also dealing in a climate where you've got Googles and Amazons really being beat up for being so big, and now you've got customers that used to have more bidding contractors having less bidding contractors. They got to go further down the list to get those bidding contractors. So that's the cynical side of me. The capitalist in me says this is actually fantastic. And echoing on the flyover countries, that base is absolutely reinforced. So I do agree with that. And, there'll be some people probably left without work, but then they'll find other work, and that's how things go. It's progress. But yeah, I tend to have this crazy cynical bent for being a true capitalist and an entrepreneur, right? Wouldn't I want to buy up everybody? Of course I would. So forget what I say about that. That's just me. But it's how I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Really quickly, Paul, and I love Cory Doctorow. Don't misunderstand what I'm going to say. He has a new book out on the monopolies of the 1980s, actually out or coming out. A guy that I follow on Twitter just mentioned it the other day. So talking about that very thing, right? The bigger ones getting bigger, and some of the political wranglings that happened in the U.S. and made that possible. And I'm an old media guy, and I have my own 2 cents about, the fact that we basically work for Disney now. Max, question here off of what Paul said. I actually brought this up last week when we were talking with Mark Pescatore from SCN about the spread there between number 1 and number 50, right? You got $1.5 billion down to 10 million, right? You do have the bigger folks getting bigger. The vast majority of the top 10 are private equity, and the smaller, the lower end of the 50 are smaller, privately held businesses. What does a acquisition like that do to the landscape of really the business of AV?
Yeah, so when you look from an NSCA approach, one of the big things that we talked about before pre-COVID was industry consolidation and how important it is for us as a growing industry as we're getting into the IT space. So to me, this is it's an important thing. It's very, very healthy. Hopefully, we're getting back to a healthy environment. And are things getting back to normal? That's the big question after the pandemic. And I think so. This is really exciting for us at NSCA. And the real question that I like to pose is, who's next?
Okay. Since before we go, because you started this, Max, I'll give any of the 3 of you a swing at this. Who's next?
I plead the 5th.
And not
I'd like to say.
I'm not asking who SPL is going to buy. I'm just going to say who's next.
Maybe something in the East, I think. Probably a small or mid company in the East, for the fact that a lot of companies on the other side, the left of flyover country, are trying to make their way to the East market more and more. So I'm thinking that could happen. I know a lot of talks have been happening from west to east because they want to expand their business east. So might kick up. I suspect someone in the east.
All right, we'll leave that one there. Actually, speaking of SDN, our friends over at SDN, which we got to hang out with this week for the AVNation, AV Network Nation virtual event on Thursday. You can still register for that. You can still watch some really smart people and me ask dumb questions to smart people. But they have a story here about Extron. ShareLink Pro has an upgrade. Extron is a sponsor of AVNation. This upgrade gives the ShareLink Pro the ability to double as a digital signage player, which is interesting to me for a number of reasons. First of all, they are one of 6-7 companies off the top of my head and a little bit of research that have done this over the last, let's say the last 2 years, where they have taken an appliance that already exists in a closet, in a rack somewhere, and they said, okay, here's a software upgrade, here's a firmware upgrade, here's a software upgrade. Now it does this. And primarily, those upgrades have been turning those into digital signage. Teams is going down this road. Zoom is going down this road. A number of other hardware manufacturers. Charmaine, I'm going to start with you on this. Is the digital signage market that robust? Is it that ripe for domination, where all these traditional AV manufacturers, right, are saying, hey, here's an opportunity for us to do a value add, I guess, to the space and go, hey, we can play digital signage too?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm kidding. So yes, it is. It is that right. What's happened since the pandemic is, and even a little before the pandemic, a lot of clients were entertaining more digital signage to, bolster up engagement within the corporate office, right, within their spaces, to get out messages, to get out information. But now with the pandemic, that has accelerated like 3, 5, 10-fold. So right now, a lot of clients are, doing this because the consultants, as I keep telling everyone, they never stopped working during the pandemic. They're the only ones that never stopped working. and they have been recalibrating a lot of their designs to factor this value add in. So it's a big thing that the consultants have been working through over the pandemic, factoring this digital signage component and redesigning some of the things and factoring it in now. And the manufacturers who speak to them a lot are starting to find, the consultants are, giving these asks and like, okay, what can I do? So a lot of manufacturers, absolutely. It's something that the corporate environment, for better engagement, for people who are in the offices are now more spaced out, right? To make sure you could take most appliances and create digital signage where they could push that anywhere in the environment.
Paul, and we mentioned the fact that JetBuild is software. What does that process look like? When Charmaine was talking about how integrators they're giving feedback to the manufacturers, how the clients, the end users, are giving feedback to the manufacturers. What does that process look like to you, a software manufacturer, right, who's needing to kind of push things through and go, okay, that makes sense to me. Now this is that process. This is when you can expect this next iteration or this next feature set.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because in some respects, it's kind of like the community, like the tail wagging the dog in one respect, right? When you have the end users crying out for things, and then it works its way up into a feature set. But that's also always been done. The companies respond to the demand, and we try to do that just the best we possibly can to answer to what the end users are asking for. I think this is a fantastic example of that, and one that I think is done through licensing rather than a new box is what's the most fascinating thing to me. As I understand the release, and of course you can license these other features as well through that technology. But the idea that as an integrator, and although we did more live performance systems, fine arts and house of worship, we had a good number of corporate clients in doing conference systems, and we would be literally adding box on top of box with matrix switchers and servers in order to bring signage into a conference room, right? And then routing that through some kind of a QSys or Extron processor to do the switching so that when the room's free, now you can go back to signage. So I think the functionality is fantastic. And but the fact that that they're bringing it in the same box you've already got behind the TV or you already got in the room, which is hard for a manufacturer, right? Because they want to sell boxes and they got to sell more boxes, and they just cost themselves whatever the $2,000-$3,000 box. But licensing, clearly, everybody from QSys and so forth, selling licenses like what I love doing. There's power there, and then you get more fans.
Okay, so let me push back slightly on this, and Max, I'm going to give you a second, but something you said there, Paul. Could it not be that I say this because as I said this yesterday, I think on the AV Network Nation, where this is a feature set that they're adding to an existing box simply because they can. So instead of selling more boxes, they're selling more hardware eventually, right? And I contend that a number of manufacturers are looking to software solutions to supplant the hardware. And what I mean by that is you're in Newport Beach, right? You can probably look out your window and see the miles upon miles of cargo ships that are just waiting to get into Long Island, right? Manufacturers, AV and otherwise, are looking to get rid of those and not rely on those anymore and still make money. So if I can replace a box with a piece of software, why don't I do that?
No, I think you're exactly right. It's fantastic. Other than the amount of money they can make on a new $2,000 box is more than a $100 or $200 license, right? That's all I'm saying. I don't know the numbers. I don't know the margins, but you're right. I believe you gain the fans, and so you get more adaptation to your brand because you've done this. And so now more consultants perhaps are going to say, you know what? Then I'm moving more of these for next year. That sells more boxes. And then, of course, the existing clients are even that much more happy to stay with the brand rather than the other brand that maybe did the same thing. So, no, I agree with you. I know it's a hard move for manufacturers who want to move those boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the boxes, let me be frank, the boxes are still sitting on the cargo ships, right?
And they're still sitting on the cargo ships.
And they still need to sell them, right?
So it's a way to deliver functionality without having to rely on those ships.
Exactly.
Yeah, but to jump in a little bit, the manufacturers also, as you said, Paul, they want to keep a consistent tie with the customer, right? Recurring to stay sticky with the customer. So this is another way for them to just stay sticky. A lot of manufacturers now have spun up their own software, right, to do something like that. So it's kind of falling in line. It's like it's much faster. They're falling in line with that, which started, again, before the pandemic. And they're like, okay, makes sense now. We want to keep them with us. And when we come out boxes later, they're with us and we could just add on.
No, I absolutely agree. And sorry, Max, we're stepping on this. You'll get, but I totally echo that. At JetBuilt, we're constantly that glue is really important. Provide the value, and that gives you the glue. I would believe that a 10% revenue today, if you've got glue, is worth more than 100% if it's a one-time, right? Because everybody wants recurring, and the license, not that this license is a regular recurring expense, but you're buying glue, right? And I believe that glue is far more important because the customers will swap. I mean, I pulled a big university off of one leading processor to another whole brand on a project, and they're talking about thousands and thousands of units. So glue is very, very important. You got a good point.
Yeah. All right, Max. Take a look at from the digital signage standpoint. I mentioned the fact that this is not the first, and it probably isn't the last traditional AV manufacturer that's getting into the digital signage space. What is it about that space that is so attractive or so inviting to traditional AV?
Yeah, when you look at reports that we've created here, digital signage is actually our number one primary system that our integrators are installing. So it makes sense
Really?
Yeah, it's from our financial analysis of the industry, digital signage was the number one reported primary system / technology, followed by audio, sound, and reinforcement, and then nurse call and life safety. So it makes sense why they're jumping into this space. And then it also helps with the whole side on the service agreement side, is adding this service, this feature set as a service bundle for the integrator to sell.
Okay, I do not get stumped or I do not have a lack of words or loss for words very often. That is absolutely shocking.
Yeah, if you check out the 2020 report, I can send it after this call for you.
Send it to Mitchell. Send it to Mitchell. Put it on. No, seriously, send it to Mitchell. He'll put a link on this episode's page because that is not saying that y'all don't know how to do digital signage. Don't misunderstand. But the fact that it's the number one revenue is a little bit shocking to me. Okay.
And just that's the feature set of, or the group of integrators that we have as members. That was the report. So.
All right. Final story comes to us from our friends over at AV Magazine, which the last time I got to hang out with Paul, that's who we were hanging out with for the AV Awards. Talking about record vacancies in AV is looking for is aiming and changing the way people are recruiting. Graham Massey, who we know, talking about service jobs for Jacobs Massey, says what we're finding is that we're actually filling more roles than ever, ironically, but with fewer candidates. Now, say that again. Graham Massey is Jacobs Massey, which is the company, the recruiting company. They're filling more roles, but with fewer candidates. For instance, hypothetically, you used to have 20 to 30 applicants for a position. Now you may have 5 to 10. Charmaine, this program 10 years ago, probably 10 years ago when we started, was talking about recruitment and education and AV. And 10 years later, we're still talking about it. How do we get in this current environment, not just more applicants, but more applicants that are, just not just qualified, but also kind of excited about the industry? In other words, this is an age-old question. How do we get, young people in the next generation, applying for jobs in AV?
You ready? You ready for the 3 answers?
Yes.
Education, education, and education. So this is what I mean by the 3 answers. Education first, educating the talent pool, people who are looking for jobs that have some tech acumen about AV. That's one of the things we don't do enough in this industry. We don't advertise who we are, what our career paths are, what opportunities exist for people to come to our industry. The second thing is education for the people who are here to further advance and progress them so they can take these other opportunities and move on. The problem that we're having in AV nowadays is we have so many openings, but not enough knowledgeable talent that can take them. But then you have a lot of entry-level talent also, the compounded, that wants a higher salary now for not having as much knowledge. And that's what we're running into now, I think, as an industry. And the third part of education is, the integrators have to find a way to, do a track of elevation of education with the employees they have. Because what's happening now with all the acquisitions we talked about earlier, the AVI-SPLs, Diversified and HB, all they're doing right now is they're looking to poach and get people and hire people. So they're going to take away from other integrators to augment their team, and they're going to pay high dollar for it. So those integrators are going to be left with a void, and they're going to have, people that aren't able, they don't have a track of education to elevate the employees to fill some of those voids and move up the ladder. So education is going to be for the industry to educate the world about opportunities. There's a lot of people that can come into our industry that will bring some of that IT acumen and learn the AV, which is, not a hard learning curve, and help, not only augment our industry, but give us some additional, things we didn't have before. And then education within the respective AV firms to really, help give and that knowledge. It's all about getting that knowledge about ourselves out, and then the knowledge on the technical level on, moving the people up. I know that was long-winded, but.
No, and I like that. You're right. We do have to educate, obviously, the baseline education, but also telling others about this industry.
Yeah.
I mentioned the fact that Paul has an interesting background and pathway to where he is now. Because just like 99% of you, the first time I met Paul, the second time I met Paul, the first time we talked about Infocom or whatever, the inevitable question comes up is how you got involved in AV, right? How'd you get into this industry? And Paul, again, does have an interesting, buy him a drink. He'll tell you all about it, including ending up in the studio that recorded Thriller. Just saying. How do you get folks involved? Like, how do you pull people, Paul?
Well, it's the craziest thing because, my path to AV was through being a rock star, aspiring rock star, early on, having a good run with my bands, but that leading me into record production and then recording albums here in LA. And then, then when I get into family life and kids, then the all night studio is not, a good path. And I wound up getting asked by a few churches and restaurants to look at their AV systems. And next thing I knew, I was kind of an AV integrator. But then I find out, I'm not the only person been their path. Because as I talk to integrators every single day through my company, it seems like 90% of them was a guitar player or this or that, or they were hanging lights in a theater growing up or this or that, right? So we've got this industry that so many people don't know about, right? Because I remember raising money for JetBuild and investors are going AV. So you're talking about like the guy that hung the TV on my living room, going, well, yeah, it can be that guy, but it can also be the people hanging, the Staples Center systems, right? So, but they're like, oh yeah, I never thought of that being an industry, right? And I think so many new talent, they understand what it's like to get into a general construction or electrical or whatever other like installation trade, but they're just AVs like off their radar. So there's a bit of education about the industry, I think that, but here's the crazy thing. The opposite side of that coin is the fact that the AV industry is filled with so many passionate people. They grew up hanging these light fixtures in their theater and they just love it and they do it today. Or they grew up playing guitar, hearing a great sound system, they want to do that today. Or they grew up doing whatever, screwing on with computers and they love making these conference systems work. So I think while we've got this weird little bubble that people may not be aware of as much on the wide scale, those that are in it are hugely passionate about it, more than most, right? More than most people get into being a doctor or a lawyer, right? That's not something they're as passionate about. That's just a path they chose for whatever other reasons. But how do you get more people to understand what we do? And I don't know if there's an answer to that. That's an interesting thing. I know every industry is dealing with the same problem, of course, about recruits, but we're in this weird little bubble that not a lot of people know. I got to shut off because I talked too long the last
You're
talk.
Fine, dude.
If I could add, so taking those passionate people, maybe we can take that group of passionate people and push them into places where we're not typically looking. Let's jump to the high school level. Let's get it in front of the juniors and seniors and start talking about maybe apprenticeship programs. When you look at a school in Iowa like I went to, the only two type of associations or organizations that came to me as a senior was a 4-year university or a military. So I didn't see any integrators. I didn't see any low voltage guys coming to me and asking me for jobs. I think that would be a great spot for us to look is at the high school level, and then getting even more granular, looking at the college level, looking at the engineering schools, the Cornell universities. Shout out to Andy Bernard from The Office, Georgia Tech, Iowa State. Those are different schools that we should also look at from an engineering standpoint.
Yeah, fantastic point about the high schools, because you've got hundreds of thousands of kids right now hanging lights, setting up mics, programming this and that, and they're loving it. But how many of them actually think this is what I could do for my life? Maybe 10% of them think that there's actually work out there, short of like working in a theater, doing the production work. But in terms of installing those systems and designing those systems, probably almost none of them would think that, right? My kids love the theater and they don't think that, even though their dad did AV for so many years. They just, they're thinking of what most kids think of. They want to be the person on the stage, or they want to maybe run those shows. But getting into the AV side, maybe they think of it as like that becomes your backup plan later, when that kind of is how a lot of us got into it. But yeah, going to those, what a fantastic idea. Look at some of these massive companies you're talking about. If they send teams of people to high schools to start talking, this could be your path, right? Now, not to take away from, many of them should still go through college first, obviously, especially if you want to get into the office side of AV. But to be an installer to start, or whatever, concept is, what a great idea.
And also another thing is not just colleges and high schools, but other tech-like industries like telecom, for example. A lot of people who work for the Verizons, the Time Warners, there's not a lot of growth in the career paths that they're doing, the techs that are in the field, commissioning lines and telephony and IT and network. And once you get a taste of, that's how I came into the industry. I came in from that side. And once I said, oh, wow, this is interesting. They don't want to keep, they don't want to keep doing the same old thing over and over again. AV, not only are we passionate, we're creative as hell. So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my best two installers that I ever had at my AV company, one came from IT, the other came from general construction, both of which were like, they were doing those jobs and they were really skilled at that, but there was zero creativity there. And they I met them both on jobs, and they're like seeing us do cool things, and we like shut the building down, there's lights and there's crazy stuff. And they're going, you guys get to do the fun stuff. I'm like, you know what? We need people, come to us, right? So that's a great point, Charmaine, that's an awesome place to grab them from.
yeah, they like that especially the millennials. They want to do creative stuff.
All right, that is going to do it for us. Thank you all so much. Charmaine Torella from Verix. How do people connect with you or Verix if they're so inclined?
If you want to connect with me, check me out on LinkedIn, Charmaine Torella, last name Torruella. You can also find me on Twitter as well. And my Gmail, which is charm, CHARM, my last name @gmail.com. And happy holidays from the Verix holiday party.
Happy holidays. Very cool. This may be the very first time that we had somebody from a holiday party. Mr. Dexter, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. How do people connect with you or JetBuilt?
Well, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. LinkedIn, Paul Dexter. I believe that's my little handle. Although if not, you'll see me there listed by JetBuilt, JETBUILT. And of course, jetbuilt.com. And thanks so much for having me. That's been great. And yes, happy holidays to everybody. And it's going to be a great one after COVID, a better one since last year.
Absolutely. All right. Mr. Johnson, thank you, sir. Tell Tom that he's not fired. So you did fantastic. But how do people connect with you or NSTA?
Yep, catch me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter. I'm not very active on Twitter, and not quite the AV tweep level.
Neither is LeBlanc either. So you guys
we got to work on that here at NSCA.
You both do, yes.
But yep, catch me at nsca.org as well. M Johnson is Max Johnson at nsca.org.
All right, very good. For Tim Albright, don't follow me on the Twitters because at this point I am just bemoaning the fact that I'm a Bears fan. But go by the website if you would, please, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. Last week we talked about it. It is going full storm ahead. The AVNation annual the AVNation Readers Choice Awards, 2-step process. The first step is the nomination. This is when you go out and you say, this is this person and I want to do this, and I think this is fantastic. Go on there, nominate whoever you want. Come the 1st of January, we will tabulate all of them, put them together, and it'll be a 3-round bracket type system where number 8 will go against number 1 and bada bada boom. And by the time ISE rolls around, we will crown our winners for that. All sorts of things, a couple of really great new categories, and of course the annual AVNation AV Tweeps of the AV Tweep of the year will be announced as well. Also, check out a couple specials we have coming down the pipeline. Our annual end of the years, taking a look at the biggest stories that we had in 2021, both for myself as well as our buddy Matt Scott over at ResiWeek. So check all that out and more at AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.